Hey guys, welcome to my channel. I hope you're all doing very well. So I just watched Wednesday season 2. Let's talk about it. So Wednesday is back, as is the rest of the Addams family, after the first season dropped a few years ago and it ended up exploding on Netflix.com to become the highest, most watched series on the platform. Well, fast forward a few years and of course the stakes are high for the second season of this gargantuan show, and here we have Wednesday back at it again with her shenanigans, her crime solving, her mysteries, horror, gruesomeness, all of that good stuff that we've come to know and love from the character and the supporting characters of this show, this whole renewed universe that was envisioned by Tim Burton, and he also directs, if not all, but some of the episodes of this series, and it has absolutely reintroduced the Addams family to a whole new generation, much to many of ours' delight. Now, before we get into my thoughts on Wednesday season 2, as per usual, if you haven't already, please be sure to subscribe to my channel and make sure you turn your notifications so that you can be told when I upload next. Now, without further ado, guys, let's dive into this. The first thing that I'll say that I absolutely adored about season 2 of Wednesday was, of course, the return of none other than Jenna Ortega. I truly think Jenna Ortega in this role is some of the best casting that we have, quite frankly, ever seen on television. She is note perfect as this generation's Wednesday Addams. She has the look, she has the posture, she has the facial expressions, the mannerisms. Everything about her performance in this role is just extraordinary. She has become Wednesday, the quintessential version of this character to many of us, and I think she's highly deserving of that crown because, quite frankly, very few people have done it better than her. Now, another thing that I really love about this series is the supporting characters as well. In particular, you have none other than Catherine Zeta-Jones portraying the one and only Morticia. I think Catherine Zeta-Jones is also perfectly cast in this role. She has the look down, although she did have a little bit of a different look for season 2 in comparison to season 1, but we won't dwell too much on that situation. The point is that she does still look absolutely stunning as Morticia, and Morticia was given much more to do this time around. I think they heard the fans and they heard our cries for more Catherine Zeta-Jones in this role, and so whilst in season 1 she was very much a background character popping in and out looking glamorous while she did it, this time around she was very much embedded in the storyline with a particular focus on her mother-daughter relationship with Wednesday and how stretched and tough it could be at times. And the same thing goes for the rest of the Addams family, including Louise Guzman, who is a great Gomez Addams, as well as Pugsley, who is portrayed by Isaac Ordenes. So I think all around the Addams family is very well cast here, and I think the storyline that they gave them, where they're a little bit more involved in the main storyline, there are a whole bunch of twists and turns and backstories that we get to explore, especially in the second half of the second season, I think really works to put the Addams family at the forefront and really promote the idea of Addams family values. You see what they did there? That's something that was repeated several times, especially in part 2 of the series, and I thought it was a cute little nod to the original film. And then across the board with the supporting cast, whether it be the guest actors or the recurring characters like Steve Buscemi, Christina Ricci, Gwendolyn Christie, who looks absolutely sensational. Okay, in the Wednesday world, she belongs in the Wednesday world just as much as she belongs in the Sandman universe as well. Like, she is truly that woman. Okay, and then you have Billie Piper being introduced in season 2 as this music teacher who's also a werewolf and is able to really help and connect with Ingrid, discovering that she is actually an alpha, and that comes with a whole bunch of complications, not least of all that she might end up being alone without a pack, and she's terrified of that, but still decides to make the ultimate sacrifice in the end. Oh, and then a huge shout out to an incredible piece of casting, and that is Joanna Lumley portraying Grandmama. That was insane. I mean, the casting director for Wednesday just across the board is mwah, chef's kiss. I haven't seen this elite level of casting since, well, The Pit, which recently won an Emmy for casting. But listen, if Wednesday ever gets nominated for an Emmy for casting, I would not be surprised, and I would be even less surprised if it ended up winning, because just across the board you have some really well-known career actors who are given these perfect roles, and they really do shine in them and help build the world of this version of Wednesday and the Addams family. And as if that wasn't already impressive enough, of course you have the one, the only Lady Gaga. Lady Gaga. I will say though, you know, Lady Gaga's appearance in this season, okay, in the world of Wednesday makes perfect sense. Like, you want to talk about fitting in, she absolutely fit in, especially because she's in her mayhem era. Ooh, she's in her mayhem era, and the character of mayhem that she's taken on for this album rollout and promotion perfectly fits in with the Wednesday universe. So that's just like a weird coincidence, I guess. But also, of course, because in the first season you saw Lady Gaga's song Bloody Mary blow up in a huge way with Wednesday's dance, and so it makes sense then that they got the legend herself to appear in season 2. But my only note would be that instead of portraying Rosalind, I thought it would be perfect casting for Lady Gaga to portray Ophelia. I don't know why they didn't get her to portray Wednesday's mysterious missing auntie. I think that would have been just, again, a stroke of genius in terms of casting. But perhaps it's a case of Lady Gaga's you know, commitments or her availability. Like, maybe she didn't want to commit to portraying as such an involved character, especially because it seems that we're going to be getting much more of her in season 3. So that might be the issue with that, but it would have been amazing to see Lady Gaga portraying Ophelia, you know, her with Catherine Zeta-Jones and Joanna Lumley. Like, that is a hell of a family dynamic. So all across the board, I have to say the casting for Wednesday is just absolute perfection. Even Steve Buscemi, who like I brushed over pretty quickly, but he made for an exceptional villain. And finding out that he was the one behind Morning Song, you know, he's coming into Nevermore, you know, as this new head teacher, and he's trying to convince a Wednesday to convince her grandmother to give up a whole bunch of her fortune, and instead he ends up turning to the sirens to do so, just as he used them for his cult. That whole storyline was brilliantly executed. I think Steve Buscemi ended up being perfectly cast for that role as well. And another thing that I of course really enjoy about the wonderful world of Wednesday is the world building itself, especially visually. I mean, here you have Tim Burton, you know, as the sort of visionary behind this iteration of the Addams family, and I think it's a perfect fit. I mean, I did do a review of season 1 of Wednesday a few years back when it came out, and I probably said the same thing. I can't remember. I can't remember what I said, but I probably said the same thing, because it is just a perfect fit when it comes to filmmaker and intellectual property. Like, it's a no-brainer. And so you have a return to this world, and it just feels like, again, like a perfectly fitted glove. You have wonderful costumes here, and all of the costumes have like the characters in mind. I especially loved how Grandmama was styled, especially her heavy boots. Like, you would think someone like that would have like delicate little heels, but she has like this kind of Victorian Gothic-esque appearance to her from like the leg up, and then she has these like metal boots. Like, it's really just kind of rock metal, just kind of hardcore boots, which I love. Her whole aesthetic was chef's kiss. And then Catherine Zeta-Jones just looked insane, wonderful, incredible. Every single shot that she had. I love her long black hair, those bundles. Someone give me a link to the bundles, okay, because they are flawless. But we already know the costume designers and hair makeup team can do black gothic styles really well in the world of Wednesday. But then you also have other styles, like of course Ingrid, who has her own distinct kind of girly kitsch, sort of emo-esque, but not in like the dark and gloomy way, kind of look, and they're able to carry that out really well. So much so that this season we even got a sort of Freaky Friday episode. Oh, speaking of Freaky Friday, which I was in my previous review, we saw Wednesday and Ingrid swap. Oh, they did little swapsies, and we got to see Jenna Ortega's Wednesday in Ingrid's garb. And it turns out that Wednesday is quite literally allergic to colour. Like, in the literal sense, breaking out in hives. Literally, sis was suffering. But Ingrid, deep down inside her, was like, this is all worth it, because they had some beef between them. Ingrid not realising that Wednesday was working her butt off to try and prevent a premonition that she saw from happening, whereby Ingrid would die. Oh, Ingrid would die a horrible death. Well, that didn't end up happening anyways, but it did make for a really cool episode where we got to see them swap around. And Jenna Ortega had a blast portraying Enid, not Ingrid, by the way, I just checked. Enid, whilst you had Emma Myers portraying Jenna Ortega's Wednesday, note perfectly as well. I'm sure that was a great time for the actresses to kind of play around with these two characters. So if we're keeping score here, I really enjoy the actors, I really enjoy the characters, character designs, world building, production design, all of that good stuff. That's what really keeps me engaged and excited to see more from the world of Wednesday. The one thing though, the one thing that I'm not as much of a fan of when it comes to the series are the storylines. And it's tough because there are some storylines that I like more than others. Like I said, I like the exploration of the Addams family, getting deeper into especially the character of Morticia, but also Gomez and like what he went through. We find out why he no longer has his powers. It's because he lost them to the evil Isaac, who, you know, like Isaac. He's evil, he's bad, he's an evil genius. And unfortunately he took Gomez's powers away, and he wanted to do the same thing to his son Pugsley. The nerve, the audacity. So I liked that storyline. And like I said, I also enjoyed the storyline of the scamming principal, Steve Buscemi's character, trying to leech off of the Addams family and try specifically to steal Grandmama's fortune. And I love the fact that Grandmama was so tight-fisted. Like, sis was not going to let go of a single penny. You could have said it was for starving kids and she wouldn't care. Oh, she would she was like, hell no. And she went into that meeting being like, hell no. She had to be compelled, like Damon Salvatore compelled. In order to part with a single cent of her money, she literally had to be hypnotized and manipulated to do so. So I love that for her. She is such a boss, although she has secrets of her own, as we find out at the end of the series. So I really enjoyed that storyline. There were pockets of storylines that I did like, but then there was a whole bunch of noise and mess and stuff that I just could not get as invested in. And when it came to the character of Wednesday, it was this storyline of her losing her ability. They nerfed her. Yeah, like that's literally what they did. They nerfed her for the second season, got rid of her ability because maybe it made her a bit too OP. And you know, you want to see the main protagonist go through struggle and strife so that you can still connect to them and relate to them. And it makes for a more interesting story, blah, 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 blah. Like, I know why they did it, but I just really wasn't as invested with this whole storyline of her losing her psychic abilities. We didn't get to see her do the... as often this time around. And then that storyline turned into a sort of self-reflection of what could have led to this. Perhaps it's her arrogance, perhaps it's the disconnect between her and her mother and the rest of her family. Whatever it could be, part of Wednesday's journey this season was her trying to figure out, you know, what had happened to her powers and how she could get them back. But it hasn't fully been resolved by the end of season 2, so it's something that's going to bleed into season 3, and I'm not overly invested because I don't love it when the protagonists are nerfed. I understand why they do that, and maybe it works for most people, but for me, I was just like, let her have her power and let her deal with some other shit. Also, that's another reason why I got a little bit bored, tired of some of the storylines this time around, because we also got a repeat or a continuation of the storylines from the first season, especially when it came to the, oh god, I don't even know what he's called, a rake? A Hyde, that's it. Why did I say a rake? A Hyde. I just thought of Jekyll and Hyde and that's how I remembered. Yeah, the whole Hyde storyline, dunk. I do not care about that ugly monster, that ugly boy. I know that he was relevant in terms of, you know, Isaac. Uncle Isaac, okay, who's an evil genius, very bad, but also hi. I know that he was relevant on that front, and you also have his mother making a reappearance and Isaac trying to save his mother, because apparently being a Hyde is also a curse and it makes you sick to death, literally. So that was relevant in terms of that storyline. But Isaac didn't strictly have to be Tyler's uncle. Like, Isaac could have been some random, you know, previous roommate or friend of Gomez. He didn't strictly have to be related to Tyler. But now it's going to drag on for a whole 3 seasons, and I don't know how I feel about that because I'm just not invested in that storyline. I think my nitpicks about some of these storylines basically stem from the fact that there's a bit of a disconnect between the caliber of talent, whether it comes to the actors, production designers, costume designers, etc., the people building the world of Wednesday and this iteration of the Addams family, versus the writers versus the writing, because the world building and the characterizations, performances, actors, that side of things very much feels like prestige television. It very much feels like HBO almost. But then you have the scripts, the stories, you know, even the dialogue at times, which feels very early 20-teens CW channel. And that's the disconnect that I struggle with sometimes when it comes to Wednesdays. I feel like with this caliber of talent on and off screen, we could be getting something a bit more substantive and a bit more juicy and sophisticated. You could still tap into that dark horror, even comedy at times space, but you could have storylines that are a bit better woven together and they have a bit more mystique and sophistication about them. But instead you have this really masterfully woven world that is stuck in the middle of a high school teen dramedy, that it just feels too good to be in. But we'll see what happens in the 3rd season. I am already intrigued by the Ophelia storyline. I really do hope that the writers do that justice, because they have done some decent setup here and that really has kind of built up the momentum, so it better not fall flat. And speaking of being Netflix's biggest property, I do think that season 2 of Wednesday hasn't quite reached the same heights as season 1 did. I mean, that was just an insane juggernaut of a show, you know, back in 2022. I don't think Netflix has been able to replicate that level of success with season 2 of the show, even though they were really hoping to, as you can see by the release schedule of this thing. I think it was actually a mistake and actually inhibited the show from building momentum for releasing it in 2 parts, you know, 1 part in August and another in September, just to make sure that subscribers stay subscribed to the platform for 2 months instead of just 1 for this show. Like, we see you, Netflix, we see the strategy, but I actually think that it did the 2nd season of the show a disservice, and I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of people dropped off for part 2 of season 2 of Wednesday. Although I'm not sure, maybe it's a bigger deal than what I've been seeing, but I just feel like it doesn't really have the same impact that season 1 did. Despite the fact that they tried to replicate the success of Wednesday's dance by having Enid and Agnes do a dance of their own, very well executed, but it still felt very forced and intentional. Like, this is the TikTok dance that we want people to replicate, and so it wasn't quite as organic as the first time around, where you just have Jenna Ortega doing madness on the dance floor and everyone had fun replicating that energy. With all of that being said, guys, I'm going to be giving Wednesday season 2 a 7 out of 10. So that's it from me, guys. Now that I told you guys my thoughts on Wednesday season 2, it's time for you guys to let me know what you thought of this series down in the comments below. Please be sure to subscribe to catch new videos coming up. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.